you mentioned like when we first got connected with Intel, there was a lot of, what's the word for this? Um, they call it like poser syndrome or something. The idea like, I
Imposter
don't
syndrome.
know if we can do, that's the one, imposter
Yeah,
syndrome.
but poser
You're
works
like,
too. I think I like
yeah.
that better.
I was like, I don't know if we can do this. This is a huge freaking company, and God
Yeah,
forbid something should go wrong, and they could just sue us into oblivion, right? And not that I had any reason to be worried about that, but I was terrified. Like,
yeah.
you're signing this big contract. It's like, what am I getting myself into? And I think at that time, the reason that I went forward was probably less about courage and more about hunger. Like, we needed the gig.
All right, we're live. Okay, so hey guys, we've got Chris Skaggs with us. Chris is a full-time game developer, and I know a lot of you want to learn how to become a full-time game developer. And the cool thing about Chris is he, in my opinion, he started doing this whole full-time game dev thing when it was really starting to pop off, and I think that was
Yeah.
2009, right, Chris?
Yeah. 2009. Yeah.
Cool. So really, Chris's revenue streams of how he's making money, how his company is making money, is frankly totally different than the way I make money and the way that I teach you guys how to make money. And I think the more ideas on how to make money, the better. So Chris, I want to hear your story. So let's go ahead and get started here. Wow. Tell us the story of how you got into this full-time game dev status and how you
Yeah.
are where you are today.
It's sometimes when I get asked a question that I could start in so many different places. So let me kind of try to walk this backwards. Purely on the professional side, probably you'd say that the start of what we did was actually in 2000 when I was getting out of college and out of the Navy, and that's when the internet and HTML and basically the web was still pretty raw and new. And a couple years before that, when I went to college, I got a job at a plumbing wholesale company making websites, and I won an award for like the best website in plumbing wholesale.
Award.
Because I think it was like me and two other people.
Okay.
Um, but that started web, and then we created a company that was just doing websites, and that was at a time when web was everywhere, and everyone wanted 15 websites. So it was frankly easy money, and it
Mhm.
was a good margin. What happened then for me later on is, one thing leads to another. So first you're making a website, now you're making a database, next thing it's e-commerce. And so you just kind of move your way up the food chain. But
Yep.
in 2005 was, according to kind of like my timeline, is that's where, and I'll just go right into it. Like I'm a Christian, and so for me this is a part of my story. But
Right.
for lack of telling a 3-hour story, like in 2005, I felt like God told me to get involved in video games, and I thought it
Wow.
was a stupid idea. That was a horrible idea. But like notwithstanding all of the push and the pull of there, that's where things started. But in 2005, video games was basically, there's a very, very tiny PC market, and there was the console market. And console was just too big a lift, too much money, too much barrier to entry. So I thought about this idea for a couple, 3 years, but by 2008, iPhone was getting big, and all of a sudden you could now make a game on mobile for next to nothing, right? So like your total in was 10 grand, and you could make a game, even if you just hired it out. So right at that point, we said, like, give it a shot. So my web design company, I don't know if you remember this, if you were even around, that was at a time where the economy had basically shot itself in the head again.
Yep.
And so it
Yeah,
was
I was in
hard to
high
sell a
school at the
website.
time, but yeah.
Okay. So it was
Yeah.
hard to sell a website. We were bored, tumbleweeds in the shop kind of a thing. And so like, we got nothing else to do. We'll make a video game. And you're like, at the time, you're like, how hard can it be? Well, obviously, we totally underestimated it. But then that led to our first release in 2009. And that's probably where the pivot, where what you're asking is, we made that game. It was called G Into the Rain. And it was a gravity
What was that?
puzzle. It's called G, so which is
G.
short for gravity.
I
And
got you.
it was just a puzzle game, right? It was just a simple puzzle game.
Yeah.
But that got us hired to a bunch of other gigs. And so they're
Interesting.
like, oh, I saw that game you made. Can you make one for me? Or can you make this app? And blah, blah, blah. And this is no longer so true on mobile, but for many years there, we had so many people who just wanted mobile apps, most of the time games, that it paid all our bills. So back in like 2000, web was like this. 2009, mobile was like this, and we had clients from all over, right? So it was MGM, it was MTV, it was Four Seasons. All these people wanted mobile something, right? Some app, some game, some something. And our best client wound up being Intel, who's right over the hill from us here in
Wow.
Hillsboro,
Okay.
and so they became our best customer over many years, and they had mobile everything. And so what happened for us basically is that established a work for hire business that was always high margin. You could really be in and out of a project pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and for most of them, you didn't even have to be that creative.
Now, how old were you at this
And
time, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, what was that? I was probably 35 ish.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So you're still pretty young. I mean, I'm 32,
yeah,
and so all of a sudden you land this big client with like Intel,
yeah,
which to
yeah.
me is just crazy. Was that a big ego boost for you? Like, did you think that you had finally made it?
Yeah,
Um,
yes and no. So here's a fun story. Is like right at that time they were trying to create their own app store.
yeah.
And if anyone remembers, it was called App Up, and they just wanted to compete in that same space. But like
Yeah.
App Store for Ultrabooks was their thing. And so we were in a lot of cool situations to be like on stages and with the CEO. And so you'd be kind of held up as like, this is one of our key developers. And so
Hmm.
I'm on stage with like, I think it was the CEO at the time, Renee, oh, her last name, I forget right now. And at the same time, what I know is that like 5 minutes ago, like I'm trying to figure out how to put like all of my clothes together because we were really broke at that time.
Yeah.
And so it was like I got holes in my drawers, and like and so there was this weird kind of like push me pull you thing going on.
Hmm.
But yes, one thing did lead to another, and and I'm in Taipei and I'm in Las
Yeah.
Vegas, and it was actually really really fun.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is because I know that a lot of the listeners right now are thinking, yeah, I'm not old enough or I'm not smart enough to land a client like Intel. And in reality, I mean, if you I mean, what does it take? Just I don't want to derail you, but like what does it
Yeah, sure.
take to get a contract with Intel? Are you particularly smart? Did you have a great team? Did you get
I
lucky?
think
Like,
the reason, yeah, for me, there's definitely a bit of luck.
yeah,
So I think that there is, like, and this is one of the things, like, you got to know sometimes it's just right place, right time.
yeah,
But you might have said this. There's an old saying that says, like, luck is actually when opportunity and preparedness meet.
yeah,
And so, like, people who love to think, oh, you got this lucky break, you're like, yeah, but for the 10 years we were preparing for that
yeah,
lucky break.
yeah. And
So,
I'm sure
so with
you had to
Intel,
power through that self doubt
yeah,
and just say like just the idea of like, yeah, sure, let's take on a project with Intel. That in and of itself requires some serious balls. So you've got
yeah,
like you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. It doesn't matter how old you are, and frankly, from what it sounds like, you just continually put yourself out there throughout your
exactly.
career and finally got it to work, right?
There's a lot of that. That's that persistence idea, that willingness to say yes and kind of put yourself at risk. Like
Hmm.
that's a huge piece of just being able to turn what may or may not be an opportunity into a success. You
Okay.
have to be able to say yes. And so I would say in Intel's case particularly, yeah, right there. He says like this mega company is like, hey, can you make apps for us? And we're
Yeah.
this little shop. And you're like, sure. But next thing you know, like you've got the contracts, and now you've got the
Yeah.
contractors, and now you're turning out. I think we built 400 apps for them, like over a couple
Whoa.
years. It was just yeah. Now that includes things like let's build Reversi, and then let's do it in Spanish and Russian. Like so, like
Still,
that number's
dude.
bigger than it looks, but
So
still
did you have a big team or were you just subcontracting it out to various developers across the world?
a little bit of both because
Okay.
it was very spotty. So you're like it's 6 apps this month, it's
Uh-huh.
zero next month. So there was very bumpy like that.
Okay.
But what it always
One quick
did is
question though.
yeah,
I want to get some clarity here, and then we continue. I know I'm derailing this, but I'm
no, it's
so
cool.
curious about the income stream here. Is is this a viable is this a viable income stream for listeners right now? To land these kind of contract deals and make games for another company as opposed to making their own games for themselves. They just land an IP or they land a client and then make games that way. Is there significant income in that world? You said the profit margins were high.
Yeah, we were probably making 70-80% margin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
And so
you can cut this if you want. Can you tell us the kind of money that these bigger projects are bringing in?
yeah, sure. So we would do a small mobile app, and probably we would charge anywhere from 10 grand to 100 grand per
Okay.
app. And if you're
Yep.
making 70% gross margin on that, it just depends on scope.
Yeah. Those kind of margins are nuts. Like I think I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a restaurant, and I was like, yeah, my profit margins are like 90% because it's a digital product
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
very small salaries, for like salary for me when I was doing it solo. And he was like, what? Like 90%? Because most of the time, especially with physical goods, you're not going to get near that. You
Not even
might only be
close.
10, 20%
Yeah.
margins, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
Intel was great, but they weren't the only one. What was nice is like once you kind of get what you'll find, especially with there's two kinds of clients. You have the ones who are going to like just nitpicky for every little thing, right? So
mhm.
when these people are really thin on their own budgets, they're trying to pinch you for budgets. But frankly, once you get to a different kind of client, they're really into it for the quality. They're into it for the
Gotcha.
reliability, and they don't
Gotcha.
mind paying extra for it.
When you
So
say
we
pinching the budget, you mean they want the exact number. They don't want you to make much of a profit.
nope.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and they will ping you on every detail. Like you said that this would be whatever, right? So and they always want to move the scope, and they want you to do it for free. So
Yep.
they're always doing that. Where
Huh.
clients like Intel, if they say, "Hey, can you make it blue instead of green?" You're like, "Yeah, it's a change order," and they're like, "You
Yep.
bet," right? So
Yep.
we'll just add more to it, and they're happy to do it.
Okay.
But the best thing is those guys then also tell their friends, right? So if you can make someone at Intel happy, then they tell their friends at other companies.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So we got Intel. You got this project with Intel. Let's keep going with your story.
Yeah, so what that always did is like those work for hire contracts
Hmm.
became kind of the core of our revenue stream for many years,
Hmm.
and that always threw off enough extra money that you could then get into you could build your own games, right? So while we were making games for Intel, then we could also turn around and we could make Bok Choy Boy, we could make Wind Up Robots, we could make these games that are our own
Yep.
because there was margin to do it.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah,
So one project funds another. Um,
yes,
and I'll be honest, that model is what I've been doing lately because for me it's like YouTube, online courses, and game sales, all of that combined, that funnels into, frankly, a massive R&D project. That's what
yep,
my dad calls it. Me and my dad were grabbing lunch the other week, and he was like, "Your game Twisted Tower is basically a giant R&D project because we've never made a first-person shooter. We've never released a first-person shooter. We have no idea,
yeah.
really. We know now, but we didn't know what we were doing for 2 years. So it was all just research and learning, and we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into this R&D project that we're
Yeah.
hoping pays off. You know?
And that, the thing is like if you have a revenue stream that can pay for that, that's good stuff, right? For one thing,
Yep,
it's a tax write-off. Like so that's how a lot of that
that's
stuff
right.
gets funded.
Okay.
And I think for you, Thomas, and this would be true for us, the trick about if you can do that, you keep all the IP. You keep
Hmm.
all the equity, you keep all the
Hmm.
ownership. And so you're not beholden to someone else, say a publisher or a
Yep.
funder, who's
Yep.
then going to take a big chunk off the top and demand results. So
Yes.
frankly, you can be more artistic.
That's right. That's right. Cool.
So that was one of our key revenue streams, and it remains that. So the most recent project that we released was another work for hire that we
Uh-huh.
did with the Wingfeather Saga. And so if you don't know the property, it's a series of books, kind of a light fantasy for tweens. It probably came out, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. Been very successful. Then they recently ran not a Kickstarter. They were on a funding platform to do an animated version
Uh-huh.
of the stories. That's been successful, and season one of that has been released.
Yeah.
But now they've asked us to do a game, and so
Wow.
one thing we did is we're like we gave them a nice big roadmap. Like, here's what we could do from like day one to day seven if you did all 8 seasons. And it
Hmm.
goes from the baby step is we started with Roblox as could you just get more kids to know your property?
Hmm.
And they're like, let's give it a shot. But in this case, Roblox was not set up as a monetized platform. It was set up as a
Yeah.
marketing spend.
Interesting.
So the comparison is like, how do we compare user acquisition through Roblox to say YouTube or Facebook or whatever else they're doing for user acquisition.
Hmm.
And it turns out to be actually really good. You can
Huh.
have 100,000 players on Roblox actually pretty easily.
Yeah.
And when you start to amortize that over your cost, it becomes really cost effective.
Wait, can you clarify what's going on here? So you're making a Roblox game, or you're using Roblox to drive traffic to the other game?
It's not a game; it's a TV show. We made a Roblox world, a Roblox. I think the world is experience is what they call it.
Okay.
So they paid us. to make a Roblox game world experience,
That's so
and its whole
cool. I didn't
purpose.
know you could
It's
get
super
paid to
fun.
do that.
Oh yeah. And then the whole point was like, because I mean, yeah, you can use spend Roblox, and you can do that,
Hmm.
but the whole point is actually just to get them to watch the animated show and read the books. So
Wow.
it's like it's marketing. But we made
Yeah,
a video
dude.
game, and they're
So you get
freaking
paid to
out. So
play, basically.
yeah, it's fantastic.
Dude, that's like
Um,
probably so many like Gen Z or Zoomers' dreams to like
yes.
get paid to play Roblox. I mean, I haven't even played it. I don't even know how to say it.
Yep.
But I know my nieces and nephews love that game. Man, that's so cool. I didn't know that you could get a contract for that.
Yeah, and frankly, so let's be clear. Like, because this is like one of the big secrets I hope all your viewers know. Like, do not bill for your time. Do
Yeah,
not sign hourly contracts. You bill for your experience, your
that's right.
expertise. Like, it's not just that you can run the game engine, is that you know how to run the game engine. And
Yep.
more importantly than that, you know how to make a good game. You know how to make a puzzle that works, it's fun. Like, that does not, if that's not part of what you're selling, then you're getting dinged. Like, if someone's just like, yeah, but this takes 3 hours instead of six,
Yeah.
that's got nothing to do with it. If I know
Right.
how to fix your problem in 3 minutes, you
Uh-huh.
should pay me the full volume.
So how are you landing these clients? Like, and also two questions: how are you landing clients like this? You know, these big IPs. You also got Redwall, which
Yeah.
me and my family read that when we were kids, which is just awesome that you have that IP or you have
Yeah.
the
So
contract.
that's a license. Yeah.
Yep. So my question is, how are you landing these IPs? And also another quick question: did you come up with the Roblox idea, or was that their marketing team's idea and they just needed to hire someone to do it?
Okay. Let me start with Roblox because it's a clean answer. That was not their idea; it was ours.
Wow.
We happen to know kind of a friend of a friend thing.
Hmm.
One of the guys Brock Starnes is, I can't remember his title, but he's like the executive
Uh-huh.
guy, executive officer sort of
Yeah.
at that project, and we just happen to know him. And we on our own dime we put together a proposal that says, hey, we think this would be really fun. So we pitched him to say, like, we'd love to build games for you for the next 7 years. And then we'd go like step one, step two, step three. And so we just made
Hmm.
this document, big pitch deck, and that kind of went up the food chain of like, this is actually really, really cool. And so that first step, the guys at Angel Studios, this was all new to them, and none of them were gamers. They're like, I don't know, this feels risky, but they were willing to give us a chance. And so for a
Wait, this was
pretty,
Angel
pretty,
Studios?
yeah. So the way that it's organized is Angel Studios was a funding platform, sort of like a Kickstarter.
Yep, yep.
And so they were the platform that Wingfeather used, and so
Okay.
they wind up sort of like legally. I think this is true. Angel provides marketing for the
Uh-huh.
property, so there's this three-way puzzle here.
Okay. Is that Daryl Ives? Do you know
That
him?
is a name I don't know.
Okay. So Angel Studios, did they do The Chosen?
They did.
Okay. And are they partnering with Lionsgate now? I'm not sure. Um,
I believe The Chosen is partnering with Lionsgate.
yeah.
To my knowledge, that's not.
Okay.
So at one point, okay. So you think about Kickstarter. Once you use Kickstarter to get your funding, you don't continue to use Kickstarter for going forward. Like, they've served their purpose. And so Chosen started with Angel,
Hmm.
got really successful, and the truth of it, it's no longer what they need. So
Yep.
the
Yep.
idea that they're kind of going their separate ways is probably just to be expected.
Yep.
So Angel just signed with Lionsgate and Kingdom Story Company.
I see. And so you partnered with, and for those of you who don't know, The Chosen is like a super ridiculously successful TV show about Jesus. I've watched it. It's pretty sweet. Like, it's a good show. And it's funny. We talked about how earlier before we started this podcast, how we're both Christians, and you don't want to be a Christian game studio, but you want to make good,
Yeah.
great, wholesome games, right? The
Yeah.
Chosen is great because it really is good. It's not like cringy or cheesy.
Right.
It's like actually good, because I think Christian media gets a really bad rap, and frankly, they kind of deserve it sometimes,
Yeah.
because everything looks like basically it's like just a cringy Christian T-shirt. Everything's got that vibe,
Right.
and The Chosen doesn't, and that's why when you said you worked with Angel Studios, I was like, oh, like that's a legitimate like funding source. They
Yeah.
make great content, so that's cool.
And I don't know how many, they've funded a bunch of stuff. And so
Yeah.
it's not like The Chosen was, I think, their big breakout, but they've
Uh-huh.
done a bunch of stuff, and they've been
Yeah.
very, I think, successful, and they've shepherded some great projects through.
Cool.
So yeah, long story short, to kind of close that loop, the idea, like, we proposed this idea to Wingfeather, and then by extension Angel, they gave us a chance, and sort of version one went out in March, and that was a hit. So we've been successful, and
Yep.
I expect, I think I can probably announce this. Like, we literally just signed an extension to do more of it.
Man, that's so cool. So
It's super exciting.
how many people on your team are doing this Roblox thing?
That probably takes about two people,
Yeah.
and it's not like it's full time for a little bit, right? Because you build the stuff, you get
Yeah.
it set up, but
Hmm.
then you have to do more, and so it kind of cycles back and forth
Yeah.
over
But
over a
again, they're
little
not
bit.
being paid for their time. They're being paid for their expertise, their knowledge of
Yeah,
how to do this, making great
exactly.
puzzles, right? I mean, you could have a developer getting paid 100 grand a year, but only working 2 hours a week. I'm not saying they
Yeah,
should do this, but working 2 hours a week because they're just so gifted, right? And they can
yeah,
make a really satisfying puzzle. So, can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Um, well, can we talk about Redwall really quick?
Sure.
So you also got the Redwall IP. You don't own it. You have the license to make something for Redwall,
That's
right?
correct.
Do you guys get revenue from the game sales, or do you just get paid as a contractor? You take the money and you're good to go.
In that case, it's we get paid
Uh huh.
from each game sale. So like, we're the publisher,
Oh,
and
okay.
then we send a royalty back to Random House and Redwall Abbey Company.
Whoa.
So it's
Did
like a
you buy
licensed
it?
IP.
Did you buy it?
We did technically,
Yeah.
but it's a kind of a funky story with this. Like, we got looped into that to that IP through another party,
Hmm.
who first hired us as a sub to just make something work for hire. But kind of one thing led to another, and next thing you know, we got a license, and it's actually, that one's actually really, really providential. That
Yeah.
totally
Well, I know
landed in
that
our
author
laps.
is very picky.
Well,
Um,
and yeah, exactly.
yeah. I mean, he kind of reminds me of who's the Calvin and Hobbes author? I can't remember his name. Uh, but the creator of Calvin and Hobbes is super like rigid about what you
Oh
can
yeah,
do with that
I didn't
IP.
know that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, that's cool. You were able to pull that off. So let me ask you a question because this is actually related to you landing these deals.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not necessarily a religious question because I know a lot of my audience members are not religious, and that is fine.
Yeah,
That they want to listen to this podcast. I want to make sure that we craft this conversation that we're about to have more around being yourself. So like for me, I'm really open about like what I believe in. Like I put it all over my Twitter. First thing on my Twitter is my faith because that's really important to me. First, like in my
yeah,
bio, first thing on Instagram in my bio is my faith. It's like it's the number one aspect of my life.
yeah.
After that, it's being a dad, having kids, and then making games, right?
Right on, right
So
on.
my question to you is, why should somebody do kind of the Chris Skaggs route? Why should they be open about their faith or what they believe or their mission, right? It doesn't have to be your faith. It could just be what you
Whatever
believe
you
and
want.
who you
Yeah.
are. Why put yourself out there like that? Isn't that going to limit the amount of clients you're going to get?
I know. So here's what I would say, like, to cut to it. That is the voice of fear.
Mm,
The voice of fear is the same thing. And whether it's about your religion, your faith, your sexuality, whatever it is,
yep.
it's the voice of fear that says, what if they judge me?
Huh.
What if they don't accept me? What if they don't want me? What if I can't be myself?
Uh-huh.
And fear only begets fear.
Hmm.
So, the thing is, like, we have too often bought the lie that my value is only based in what other people think of me.
Hmm.
And so, this is not uniquely a Christian thought, but it's cooked into the Christian theology, is that if you believe that you are, in our language, sacred, right? If your humanity, if your individual person is sacred, that
Hmm.
it's valuable not because someone else says that I like you or I accept you, you're just sort of intrinsically valuable,
Right.
then to live in that space is actually the only way that you ever get to live at all.
Yeah.
When we subjugate our own personal value, and we start with our professional value, like, what if I can't get a job? What if I can't, so we start with our professional value, but that becomes personal value, that becomes relational value, like, it
Yeah.
starts to spread out like a cancer.
Yeah.
If we let other people's opinion of us be the metric of us being ourselves,
Hmm.
then it invalidates our personhood,
Yeah.
and that's no way to live.
Well, what if people want to live like what if they would rather have an invalidated personhood and sign a ton of $1 million contracts? right?
Well,
So
one, I
what
think
I'm
that that's
saying
a
is,
lie,
what
though.
if, because you know, there's actors, there's billionaires, there's famous people who purposefully snuff out who they are
Sure.
for the purposes of getting as many. It's kind of like doing a deal with the devil. That's kind of the way I think about it,
Yeah.
right? And what I've found is that even from a strategic perspective, I'm curious. That's a great. I love what you said. So that's the spiritual or like emotional side of the answer, which is you want to be yourself because it's a good way to live. But there's also
Yeah.
another side of the question, which is it a good strategy? Is it a good business strategy
Okay.
for game developers to be super open about who they are? Because
So
I've
so
noticed that the
yeah,
clients you
yeah,
sign with are
yeah.
people that probably wouldn't have signed with you had you not been open, right?
Intel, Four
Yeah.
Seasons, MGM. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's true. Yeah.
So it's easy to look at the chosen angel, wing feather. You're like, oh, those
Yeah.
are faith friendly clients. But
Yeah.
the overwhelming majority of our work is not faith friendly clients.
Hmm.
Now, what I'll tell you, and this is like, let's just do the math. Let's pretend this isn't a spiritual question. The math says that there are more Christians in the United States than any other demographic. And so
Oh,
just the numbers tells you that if they're just scattered evenly across the world, you're
yeah.
more likely to make friends based on faith than not. And so like,
Okay.
let's forget if it's real. Let's forget if it means anything. That's just the demographics.
So what you're saying is everybody listening should convert to Christianity, put it in their bio, and they'll land more clients.
And they'll make more money. Exactly.
Yeah, but no, that's so interesting. I've found that if you stand for something and you're who you are and you're honest about who you are on social media, it's just like a net positive. Like, and you're gonna get people
Agreed.
who don't like what you have to say, right? It doesn't matter what it is. You could be where you are politically, it doesn't matter, but social media rewards honesty and transparency
Encourage.
and
Yes.
courage. That's right, it does. Now it's also pretty scary because okay, well then I'm not if I'm too one way or too open about this one thing, then I won't land a deal or I won't get an article on Polygon or I won't land a
Right.
deal with I don't know, let's say EA, right, or something like that, or a smaller publisher like Devolver. But what I've found is there are those publishers who do align with you philosophically,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to get a stronger, quicker, faster contract with those individuals because they may not even agree with you, but they like your willingness to be open and honest. They're
Yeah.
attracted to it, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you may have shut 9 doors, but the one door you wanted open all along is the one that opens.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would say like, but even the way you just phrased that, like what, like the way that you concluded, I agree with. But I also think that the premise is actually not true.
Yeah.
There's this notion that you're going to shut 9 doors. But I will
Yeah.
tell you, in 1,000 clients, and I don't think I'm even exaggerating, in 1,000 clients we've had over the years, we've had literally one secular client, kind of like, oh, I'm not going there, right?
By secular,
One,
you mean they're not religious or they don't like that you have a
they
religious.
don't like the fact that I'm a Christian. So one out of a
Uh,
thousand. But I would say, if anything, I'm more likely to lose religious clients. So like people who are religious, who are like, oh well, like whatever, like if you're Christians, either you should have the Virgin Mary in there, or you shouldn't have the Virgin Mary, or like
yeah, yeah.
everyone has their hangups.
And then
And
there's
so
the
it's actually,
politics of everything and the
yeah,
cultural stuff. Yeah, it becomes a
those are the
big
guys who
spider
give us
web.
grief.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, what's funny is like, well, my approach to making games is probably a little bit different than yours. Like your stuff is family friendly. Like I'm working on like one of the most violent games I've ever worked on. It's super bloody and gory. It's a horror game. There's plenty of swearing, yet at the top of my bio it's like I love Jesus. It's like what is
Yeah, yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, and I get comments on Twitter that are like, you call yourself a Christian, but you make this. Don't you know that that's satanic? And it's debatable. But at the end of the day, though, what's funny is I do get more pushback from people who I align with philosophically
Yeah,
than other people. And
yeah.
you're right that but the premise is something that I think everybody fears.
They
They
fear it.
fear if
Yeah,
I'm too much of me, it's going to cause all these people to freeze up and not want to talk to me. But the
Yeah.
truth is I think that's just like the spotlight effect of like you think that everybody cares what you have to say, and you think you're going to get canceled, blah blah blah. But in reality, most people don't really care. They just want to play a
Yeah.
great game, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
This actually goes back to the Garden of Eden. And when Adam and Eve fall, the first thing Adam says is he says, "I was afraid, so I hid." And like if we understand that one
Mm,
phrase, we understand like 80% of human psychology.
yep.
We are afraid of exposure. We're afraid of being known. It's the thing that we want the most, but it's the thing we're afraid of the most. And so we hide. And
Yep.
that's in every level. We hide from God, we hide from each other, we hide from ourselves and our wives and our kids. We hide because we're afraid. And
Is there any
overcoming that one thing.
Yeah. Have you ever had to overcome that? Like, did you used to live in a sort of state of fear when it came to your business?
Oh,
Um,
totally.
yeah. What were
Totally.
some things that really freaked you out? It doesn't have to be like I was scared to say I was a Christian, but it could be stuff like money or whatever. You know?
Yeah, I think probably you every time you have you mentioned like when we first got connected with Intel, there was a lot of what's the word for this? Um, they call it like poser syndrome or something. The idea like I
Imposter
don't
syndrome.
know if we can do that's the one imposter
Yeah.
syndrome.
But poser
You're
works
like
too. I think I like
yeah,
that better.
I was like I don't know if we can do this. This is a huge freaking company, and God
Yeah.
forbid something should go wrong, and they could just sue us into oblivion, right? And not that I had any reason to be worried about that, but I was terrified. Like
Yeah.
you're signing this big contract. It's like, what am I getting myself into? Um, and I think at that time, the reason that I went forward was probably less about courage and more about hunger. Like we needed the gig.
Yep.
Um, we got
Hunger
there,
makes you very
right?
courageous.
It does.
You know? Okay, so you were just afraid that you weren't going to be able to pull it off, and I think
Yeah.
that's what the majority of my listeners are probably afraid of. Now the thing is like how do you conquer that fear? Obviously one of the ways is just you have to do it, but a lot of
Yeah.
my subscribers they don't have to make the leap. They don't have to start a game studio, right? So they're
Yeah.
always in this comfortable state of they work a desk job they hate, but at least they're comfortable, at least they're safe.
Right.
How do you overcome the fear that you're going to fail publicly, that you're not going to be able to pull it off? How do you, is there a mental game? Is there a mental trick to figure out how to conquer your fear?
Mountain biking.
Mountain biking.
or zip lining or river rafting. So I think that courage is actually a muscle. And we have to work through casual risks in order to be comfortable and build the muscle to get more critical risks. So you build courage the way that you build a lot of things. Do something that makes your guts feel this is scary, but your
Mm,
mind knows is safe. I remember standing at the top of a what do they call them? Challenge courses, the rope courses, and you've got the big harness and everything. Like you're perfectly safe, right? There's a 300-pound men on a rope making sure that I'm safe, but your knees don't believe you, right? Your knees are shaking, you're terrifying, and you have to step
yeah.
out on this wire. But it's those little casual adventures that actually train you to have more like when the risk is real.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anyone who's looking at that, it's like do things that just feel scary.
Yeah.
Learn to overcome your fear in the little things. And pretty soon when I can step out on that ropes course, pretty soon I know how to talk to a girl. Pretty soon when I know how to talk to a girl, I know how to take a risk with my business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would really say practice.
That's really good. It's so funny you bring that up because I was thinking yesterday about a really cool business model, and it would be something called like Courage Coach. And they give you a list of like 100 things and it's baby steps. And like the final item is like your dream. Like, I want to start my own game studio. At the
That's cool.
top, it's like, ask a random person at a coffee shop if you can use their phone. And
Yeah.
it's like you slowly have to go through each one, and if you don't do it, you owe the coach $1,000. So, and you like sign a contract, a legally binding contract to do it. I want that for myself because there are certain things that I'm scared of that I wish I wasn't. And a lot of them are social stuff because I have a lot of like weird social anxiety. I can talk to a camera, but if this were a in-person conversation, I'd be totally different. But I have a lot of social anxiety, and so I want to figure out how to break through that. And a lot of my subscribers, they want to figure out how do I just make this game and release it? Like they can't click the release button on itch.io. You know, if it's like a small game, they just cannot bring themselves to release a crappy game because they're scared there's this weird thought process that they're going to release it and it's going to, for some reason, that's going to get thousands of negative votes or down votes or
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah.
When in reality, most people probably won't even play it, which maybe that's part of the fear too. You know, I don't know. So
I think that's actually really, and especially when you're in a creative thing. So like making a game, and this is probably true of making a song or a poem or anything else. Like the thing about creativity is you really are putting your soul into something, and that makes it more risky, right?
yeah,
So if I made a product for someone else, the truth is my heart's not in it. I don't care, and if it doesn't sell or succeed, it's their problem. But if it's mine, if I put my guts into it, man, to have that ignored, to have it judged, it's terrifying. So
hmm
I totally get it.
yeah,
On the other hand, it's just back to that same question of like courage is actually the root, I think, of all the other virtues, and it's something we just don't talk about very much. But it's courage that allows us to be. It allows us to take risks. It allows us to talk to people. It allows us to change the world.
hmm
But none of the other virtues work without courage.
yeah. Alternatively, another way of putting it is cowardice is perhaps the root of all evil, right?
Sure, sure,
Fear of losing power, losing control, losing your identity, your value, your purpose. And like what sucks is you can know that that is wrong to have those motivations, but like personally, I operate from those motivations the majority of the time. I was talking to my wife about it last night because I was like, I'm tired of being driven by like fear of not being respected. Like I really like respect. I want to be respected. And so a
right,
ton of my motivation is doing everything I can to ensure that I lock in respect from everybody, from my YouTube channel to my students to my friends to my family. I'm going to lock it in. And the motivation is purely fear of like being found out or
right.
being discovered that I'm actually not respectable. And she was like, "Yeah, but that's wrong." And I was like, "I know it's wrong, but I can't
But you're
change my
not helping.
brain." Yeah. But I love what you
Another
said.
thing
It's like
is,
the solution to these problems is just doing the things, building the muscle to not think that way. You have to actually do things
yeah,
that are uncomfortable to change your brain, right?
yeah. And let me ask you something because you've enjoyed some success. You've got
Uh-huh.
some people like what you do. Does it go away? The
Uh,
fear?
the the fear of losing respect,
Yeah. Doesn't that actually get worse?
it
And
gets
like
way worse.
and so it's
Dude, it
it's
gets
not
way
like if I
worse.
just had a success, it goes away. It's not
No,
like that.
yeah,
It's
it
like
gets way worse because the stakes are higher. All right?
yeah,
It's like well, like for example, like I've secured a certain amount of income based on my digital products, and that's games, online school, ad revenue, blah blah blah. I've locked in this certain amount of income. So there's the financial side, which is gaining financial respect, right? Gaining financial security, financial comfort, right? You get all these things. Well, now the fear is multiplied. Not only do I just by default, like I was born desiring respect. I think most guys are. They just want respect. I was
yeah,
born with
yeah,
that desire, probably a little bit more so than most people. And this is just me in sort of confessing. But like that that desire for respect is then like a salt on a wound. It's sprinkled with the desire for comfort, financial
yeah,
security that I'm used to. So the
yeah.
baseline respect stays there, and then on top of that is all the other stuff that I've learned to. The Christianese word is worship or idolize, right?
Right.
So it's no, it doesn't get easier, and so I'm in a constant sort of mindset of prayer. Like I don't want to be this way. I know it's not healthy. Please God help me not to be this way, right?
Exactly.
And I don't know what else to do about it. It's like, and that's the problem with any kind of success. And for those of you who are listening, who you're eventually going to release a game, and you're going to find that success. And a lot of my friends are successful game developers. You just be warned. You're going to become more obsessed. You're going to identify with it more. And by identify, I mean you become what you made.
Right.
And that's not. I mean, have you ever struggled with that with your studio?
Yeah. You as soon as it's this interesting thing. Like your first worry is that no one will notice. The moment someone notices, you're like, oh no, they noticed that. But that's not the truest thing about me. So I haven't actually solved the problem at all.
Noticed what?
I sort of like, if my product, if my game, if my
Uh-huh.
book, if my whatever it was, if they noticed that, now I feel on the hook. One, to like live up to whatever that means. Two, to
Hmm.
do it again. That's the terrifying. Like, could you ever do it again?
Yeah, yeah.
And so actually now, if there used to be a question mark, will anybody care? Now
Hmm.
people care, and that's worse. It's
It
scarier.
is.
If I invest my heart in that thing, if I invest my heart in my success, in my product, in my thing, like, and that's where for me the idea, like, I cannot find my value in those things. I have to fight it. I have to make sure that my value is in something that's bigger than me,
Hmm.
and for me that's God. For me, the
Yeah.
idea, like, I can't afford to have any thought in my head that He doesn't have about
Yes.
me. And if He
Yes.
says He loves me, that's what matters.
Right. So, what do you think about when game developers call their game their baby?
I think it's totally natural,
Yeah.
and there's a good thing to, like, you should care about it, you should love it, you should invest in it, but it shouldn't be the thing where I have put so much of my life and story in it that its life becomes my life.
Hmm.
And so I get the terminology, but you probably heard this in other business things. Sometimes you got to kill the babies, right? To make a good product, to make a
Yeah.
good game, sometimes you just have to get rid of the thing. Like, you probably have you ever read Good to Great? This idea that
No,
there's
I've heard
there's
of it
lots and lots
though.
of good things.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this on the podcast. There's lots of good things that aren't great things.
Hmm.
And can you sacrifice the good things? Like, I'm making an okay living. Like, this is okay. Like, all the reasons are like, this is good enough. Can I
Hmm.
sacrifice that for the sake of what's really eternal?
Yeah.
That's a big step.
Yeah. Okay. Man, that's really good advice. So, I really wanted to get your opinion really quick on your revenue streams. So sort of circle
Sure.
back to the revenue side of things. To segue here, we've got my revenue model is selling copies of games. Even though I do partner with publishers, I get a revenue cut. I usually get the lion's share of the revenue cut. I also make money selling like digital products, like online courses or ad revenue. I've never done client work. And so from the research I've done about you, you've got, partnering with Intel, right? Just making a ton of apps for them. Redwall IP games, basically. And then mobile gaming. Which one of those, and did I hit all the revenue streams for you guys? And then also self-published games.
Yeah, kind of more recently. I don't know if this counts as revenue, but we actually started a nonprofit. So
Oh,
I don't know if that's the same, but that does actually generate, some money, and so that
yep.
pays some bills too.
Okay.
So that's new though. That's something new.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Which one of those is your favorite and brings in, I guess, which one brings in the most revenue? Because I want to sort of talk about that one.
Yeah. So historically, the work for hire is the most predictable and the biggest revenue source. Like, that's the one,
Interesting.
but it's also has no future. So the upside is good margin. We can sell more properties. The downside is it never builds enterprise value.
Okay.
So for us, the balance that we're trying to strike is the work for hire provides income, but it's the games that have long term. So that's the publishing, the sales, the IP. Those are things that have the long term enterprise value, but it takes longer and it's more risky, right? So you can make a great game that launches and doesn't ever sell.
And is it not as fun to do contract work?
Not nearly as fun most of the time.
Okay.
I think that we've found ourselves a sweet spot
Hmm.
in that now most of our clients sort of value what we do for the sake of what we do,
Hmm.
as opposed to just like, make this thing for me and we'll pay you. Now it's more like, actually, can you bring Soma's particular style and strengths? And then really we get to do what we want to do and get paid for
Yeah.
it. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Okay, so that's another reason why you should be yourself, and that your brand should be to have your brand to have a personality and a
Yeah.
culture, and
Yeah.
to be honest, because you can use long term. The long term strategy is that you find clients that love that about you, and then they trust you, and they're not constantly nitpicking all the different things that they want for their game. They
Right.
sort of just
Right.
trust you because they like you, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So how does my audience land client deals? What are what's the path to getting client work as a game developer? Let's assume that the
Yeah.
people listening who want to do that are decent game developers. They're pretty good. They know how to make a decent game. Now, how do they get a client?
Right.
How do they get that
So
$100,000 deal at a 70%
it,
margin?
Exactly. I think you pick something that you can be good at, and especially if you can find something that is that's not oversaturated. So in our case, like our particular like kind of first big step was
Hmm.
at the time mobile in general was just not, it was brand new, and so there was way more work than there was people to do it. So in that market, it's what they call kind of a red a blue ocean. Like there's just more work than people to do it, and that's great. If you can find a space like that, and so I would argue right now one of the really underserved game genres is interactive fiction. And for most game developers, they're like, yeah, that's not really a game. I get it. On the other hand, there's like a lot of people who want that genre, and it's cheap to make, and you can be good at it. It's pretty easy to make quality, good stuff for low cost. And if you can find a situation like that, then really you start just hanging out your shingle. Like who needs this product? And especially if you can find a couple people. So Wingfeather was an example for us. We knew that what we had to offer matched their product.
Okay.
But to be clear, it probably took us a year to land that deal. It's not like we just made one phone call and we were in. Like it was building a relationship, it was getting to know them. And so if you can find that, like what are you good at? And often what you're good at is what you're passionate about. Where does your heart really sing? Because that's what brings that special sauce, right? Is when your joy and your deepest identity comes to bear, then that's where the real magic happens and the light happens. So if you can make any game that's quality, that represents sort of your skill set, you can probably then turn around and sell that to other people who want games. Gamification is a huge topic right now.
Right.
The COVID created a situation where basically every brand knows that online communities is where it's all happening.
Yep.
So there's a huge market. Don't hang out in this regard. Don't hang out with other game developers. Hang out with other brands, other companies. So you might go to broadcasting conferences. You might go to, I don't know, like restaurant conferences. Like figure a way. You think about like when Chipotle and KFC made little games, branded games to sell chicken. Like someone made good money on that gig, and they were successful, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can do 3 months of work and get paid 100 grand for it, well, then I've probably got a good 6, 9 months worth of runway to make whatever I want to make.
That's so smart. I mean, I've been teaching about this stuff. I mean, or at least doing YouTube for 6 years, 7 years, I think, and I've never once brought that up as a revenue model.
Okay.
But it's obvious to me now. It's like go land a big deal if you could find them. The question is the question is how do you find them? Like how
Yeah.
do you find these people?
Trade shows. Trade shows is the easiest.
Okay.
And like I said, go to trade shows that aren't games.
It's
Because
developers? Oh no, I see. I see.
I'm going to their so take for example, there's conferences that are just restaurateurs
Huh.
who they're selling franchises, right? So it's like whatever it is, KFC, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. There are all these places, and they just have conferences, and it might be in Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, whatever. Go there with your game. And especially if you can just spend a little time extra and you're like, this is the Chick-fil-A version of my little game. Find the Chick-fil-A people, man. It takes
Yeah.
you like 10 minutes to make a branded version, and all you need is one person who's like, that's brilliant. Like we need something new. We're trying something new. But
Yeah.
these people are not used to being cared for by game developers. Like they don't know you. They don't know where to find you. So go find them.
Find the brand. That's so funny you say that because I used to be in marketing and our clients were food service. And I've been to these trade shows, these food service trade shows. And I would watch my boss. He's a really good friend of mine now, a mentor. I learned so much from him. He would just go to each booth and become friends with every single person at that booth. The goal was to become
Yeah.
their friend. That was it. And
Yeah.
then he'd at the end give them a card, and that was it. And I think that that's such a brilliant way to think about this is to consider the niche that you'd want to maybe be in and try it out. Go meet the people
Yeah.
in that niche and see if they want to make games. I would be curious. Is there a resource available for people to look at what kind of client is interested in making games? Like, is it mainly films? Because I know Apple's got the new VR headset, and they're probably going to be
Right.
hiring people to create
Probably.
interactive worlds while the movie's playing, so you can look around at each scene. That would be sweet. But
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, that's probably going to be some work. But are there certain like industries that they just shouldn't even, that my audience shouldn't even touch? It's like, no, you're not going to tap into the vacuum market. You're just not.
So one of the customers that we had last year, I would have never expected this, but they were a cybersecurity company, and so they
Huh.
make firewalls.
Yeah.
And this is this weird thing where like they just want to try something different.
Hmm.
So we made a video game for them that they play at their trade show booth at security conferences. And so it's this real simple little like zap the bad guys kind
Yeah.
of a thing. But
Yeah.
for them, it was just this branded thing where it ties into their product. It probably took us, like for us, it was the kind of thing where I can do this with my eyes shut, right? Like making the game was easy, but for them, they have no access to game developers.
Yeah.
And then at their trade booths, they're the only people there with that kind of interactivity. And
Okay.
so their booth becomes popular, they become popular, everybody's freaking happy. So what I would say is like there's that old saying like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Like this
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Go places that are not used to gamers because then you're the only person there,
Yeah.
and they're starving for just some attention, and I think that's the most likely
And you
place.
can charge
In
the
other
most
words,
because nobody else is charging at all.
yeah,
So you can
yeah,
just. Oh, it's so funny you bringing all this up, dude, because I'm getting like flashbacks. Um, I totally forgot about this. I've made about 5 client games, and this was while I was in marketing. So we were a B2B marketer. So business to business, we weren't serving like Nike. We were serving companies that nobody knows about, right? Soap companies, truck companies, tire companies.
yeah,
And what we would do, you're so right about this. They would I was the web developer, but they also knew I made games. So I would use Flash, which is like
yeah.
Unity's grandfather. I would use Flash to create really silly. One time we made a game about soap, and it was like bubbles, and it
Right
was
on.
for a soap company, and you had to like blow up the bubbles. So I made that. I made a truck game where you drive as a truck and sort of, which is hilarious that this truck company wanted me to make a game where you have to avoid getting in a wreck, but they wanted to make it.
Yeah.
We made a bowling game as well, and you know what it was for? It was never for consumers. It was for other clients. So I would make these games to make their brand look cool. So whether it was
Yes.
for trade shows on like an iPad, or it was like a contest for an internal contest with thousands of employees. So we would make this game for like 10 grand, and it would take me like 2 weeks to make it. But I'm thinking about like the profit margins for the company, how much I was making and then how much they made off that game.
Yes.
It was a decent business model for them. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I never
And if
thought
that
about
was
that.
5, 10 years ago, like
Uh-huh.
that idea is so much stronger now.
Yeah,
So one of the
yeah,
big things that came out of the COVID is everyone's like, they're like, oh my gosh, everybody is online. Everybody is doing something. Everyone's looking for digital communities. And all of a
mhm,
sudden, games used to be kind of the redheaded stepchild in the room of like, oh, that's just for kids. And I was like, games are everywhere, man.
yeah.
Like the idea that the ability to create online communities with any reason,
Mhm.
like that's big money. That's big
Okay.
money.
Okay. So to wrap up here, if you were knowing what you know now and you're one of my subscribers, what's sort of the step-by-step process? If you were starting out right now, what would you do to land your first client? What's the first step, second step, third step, and fourth step? Hate to put
I
you on
would
the
think
spot, but I am
it's
curious.
okay.
What?
It's actually something I think I have an answer to it because we did this. Find a brand that you really care about, and the farther it is from gaming, the better. Um, that you care about. And so that could be a shoe you like, a soda pop you like, whatever. It doesn't matter. But so find a brand that you care about and then make something simple that just features their brand, right?
Hmm.
And so you mentioned like a bubble game, right? The idea like
Yep.
you have bubble pop branded for Pepsi, whatever.
Yep.
But do it really good. And then think through what it is that Pepsi wants out of this. Like what would Pepsi want out of a thing? And part of it might just be we want it to be cool. We want it to bring people together. Like pick a thing. In
Yep.
other words, don't invest your heart and soul in this, but invest your talent and your skills in it. And then figure out how to get it not only to Pepsi, but to all of Pepsi's competitors. So
Even
like,
though it has Pepsi
like
branding on it.
yeah, because the idea like if Coke sees it, like, hey, how could like I had this happen with people like, why are you working with those guys? We have twice as big a market audience. I'm like, write me a check, man. And they did. Right. So it's like, they see this as like someone else is in this market and not me. Like competition is actually a really strong motivator. So you go around that Pepsi trade show booth with all of Pepsi's competitors, someone's going to buy your game.
Okay. So is it possible to, can you do like 3 maybe? I know that that's asking a lot maybe of some of my subscribers, but like you go, okay, I'm going to do a Pepsi one, and then I'm going to do a totally different market like a car, and then I'm going to do another market, and then just go find just. So who do you send this email to, right? And what do you send? Do you send the game? Do you send a video of the game? Do you send a pitch deck?
Yeah, if you can afford it, I would actually go to the trade shows. Like face-to-face conversation is actually so much more powerful than a meetup.
Because they need to trust.
Because they need to see you, right? It's a trust question. It's not a product question. And so most salespeople good salespeople know that it's always a trust question. It's never really a price question, and it's never a product question. Those things have to be there, but it's always trust.
Okay. So that's going to get expensive. Like it'll be like 10 grand flying out to all these places, right?
Yeah, you start small. Like what's local? Like what's near you? And so I don't know. I mean, maybe the Freightliner Truck Conference is near you.
Yeah. So where I'm at, I'm in the Southeast in South Carolina. So it's like BMW. We're near like BMW. So it's like ton of like engineering, car stuff. I think Volvo is in Charleston. So for me, it's like cars and engineering. And so if it were me, I would just go, I'm going to go to all these trade shows that are big industries in my state. I'm going to do a couple projects, gain a reputation, get like 30 grand, and then I can use that money to fly out to places I really care about. Film industry is one I would want to participate in. Fly out to LA or something, go to some AR, augmented reality trade show or something like that.
Right.
And see if I could fit in there.
And I think that's a good way to kind of start a living. And pretty soon you've got contractors who are taking care of your trade games. And pretty soon you've got some enough revenue to make the game that you always wanted to, and now you're getting paid to make what you love.
Right. And so my approach is different than yours. So my approach is do a kick butt Kickstarter campaign, or work with a publisher and get 60% of the revenue. But you've mentioned a third here, and I think it's brilliant, which is client work. And it gives you experience, helps you become a better developer. And like, do you ever feel like at this point you're never really going to have a financial emergency because you just know you've got a sort of clients in the hopper and you're good to go?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm old enough now. I've lived through a couple of those places where sometimes the world falls apart and it's got nothing to do with you, right? There's we're like
2021.
So like 2021 was only the most recent. I've lived through 2 others. You're like, like sometimes there's no such thing as safe, but yes, in general, I think you're right. You certainly hedge your bets and you get a lot safer.
Cool. Well, Chris, man, this was fun. Like this definitely was a conversation I wanted to have because I wanted to learn about the client world. So many of my subscribers, I am very laser focused on a few revenue streams, but I think a lot of my audience members, all they think is I make money by selling a game. So it's a game copy on Steam. That's how I'm going to make money. And what I want you guys to know, everyone listening, is that it is there are like hundreds of ways to make income. If you can make, this is what I want to leave everyone with, and maybe Chris, tell me if you agree. If you can make a good game, all you got to do is figure out how to find the person with the money and satisfy them, and you will become successful, right? Yeah. So it's really a question of finding the work, not if you can do it, right?
Exactly. I think that's true.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, I will end this podcast. Guys, thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the link below. We're going to leave Chris, do you want to leave your socials and your website below in the description? Is that good?
Yeah, sure. That'd be awesome.
All right. And anything else you wanted to leave the audience with?
With you, Thomas, I want to invite you. Like, I want to engage with you more on what you're doing. You're influential in this market, and I want to encourage you to like use it for good. I mean, you already are. Yeah. But I have an idea I want to throw past you, but not online.
Okay. Well, after I hit the stop button here, Chris is going to try and manipulate me into doing something here. Just kidding. No, I'll see you on the other side, bud. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching or listening. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a review. That would mean the world to me. And hey, if you're on YouTube, click that video right there. You're going to love it. I'll see you later. Cheers.